Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. And you can take that part out or leave it in. Reverend Bob Murphy is a Unitarian Universalist community minister in Florida. He wrote the Organizing for Health Equality statement that was approved by the 2024 General Assembly. Bob will provide background information. He'll explain the religious and cultural roots for our health equity work.
I'm
And
Bob.
I will
I'm Bob
spotlight
Okay.
Bob.
Okay, I'm in the spotlight. I want to thank everybody who has helped to make this program possible. I want to thank all of you for your patience, your wisdom, and your kindness. Every one of you is very much appreciated, whether you're on screen or off screen. All of you made this program possible. I'm Bob Murphy, and as Terry has said, I am a Unitarian Universalist minister in full fellowship. I am here in Florida, parish ministry for 30, 35 years. I'm now sort of retired. I work with several congregations and communities all the way down to Key West. And much of what I do is help senior citizens, people with disabilities, and other people who are frequently on the margins in this Florida society. Today, I'm going to talk about health equity. As Terry has mentioned, last year's General Assembly, our National Convention for Unitarian Universalists, approved a statement called Organizing for Health Equity. This is still a new concept for many Unitarian Universalists and for many others. So I have to explain, and I'll provide some religious roots first of all. This concern about health and healing is an ancient concern in organized religion. It goes all the way back to Hippocrates, but you'll find this theme in every major tradition among Buddhists, Hindus, Christians, Jews, Muslims, almost every major group that you can name. Moses and Miriam were very much involved with healing during the 40 years in the wilderness in the story of Exodus. Jesus of Nazareth, of course, was a great healer and a great teacher by all accounts. The prophet Muhammad and many of his early disciples. Also the Buddha, many leaders, religious leaders throughout the world have put a great deal of emphasis on health and on health protection. And the Unitarian Universalists have been no exception. Now, maybe things were different in ancient times. I'm not going to speak about that possibility, but certainly by the time that the Industrial Revolution developed, and by the time of the great age of imperialism, which was really developing in the 1800s, early 1800s, it was becoming obvious that there were great disparities in public health. That was becoming more obvious that rich people in particular were often protected, often lived longer lives, just generally were in better shape. Frequently, it was the poor, the marginalized, who died at an early age, who suffered the problems of nutrition, the problems of pollution, lack of medical attention, a long list of other concerns. So this interest, this worrying about the disparities in health. Why do some people live comfortable lives while others suffer? It's been present in organized religion for a long time, but it becomes more and more of a theme moving into the Industrial Revolution and into the great age of imperialism. For Universalists and Unitarians, it's a very important tradition. Among the Unitarians, we could talk about Florence Nightingale. Everybody knows about Florence Nightingale. They know that she was an English Unitarian in the 1800s, often identified with nursing. She was a very good nurse, but she did a lot more than that. Essentially, she invented social statistics and brought them into public health, and was very much aware of the disparities in society, in England especially, the differing rates of death and of disease. Why are some neighborhoods healthy and other neighborhoods are not? It's exactly the sort of thing that early Unitarians wanted to focus on. In the United States, we could talk about Clara Barton, who is often identified as a Universalist who established the American Red Cross. Well, she did that, but she did a lot more things beyond. She was an excellent administrator like Florence Nightingale and very much concerned about problems in community health, especially during the American Civil War and in the years that followed the American Civil War. Nowadays, when we talk about health equity, we're particularly concerned about problems that involve race, ethnicity, different cultures. Some are abused, some are protected. And we'll hear more about that from the different speakers today. Why is it that problems, certain cancers, heart conditions, respiratory problems are much more widespread in some communities and among some racial groups than they might be elsewhere? And when we talk about health equity as Unitarian Universalists, these are some of the problems and concerns that we have in mind. We're often asked, well, what exactly are congregations supposed to do about this? I mean, how do we get involved? And as you're going to discover today, there are many congregations that are already concerned about health-related problems in the community, and particularly as they affect the most vulnerable members of our society. So Reverend Ben in St. Petersburg will talk about his congregation's work with people who are houseless, often the poorest of the poor. Lisa Pineda will talk about food justice, community gardening. Really, the emphasis is often on mutual aid, on empowerment, and on conscious raising, health education, other themes that are very important to Unitarian Universalists. Climate change, the impact of climate change is here and now. It's not 30 years into the future. And this is one of the topics that we'll learn about today, how climate change affects different racial groups, different age groups, occupational groups, and so on. Again, what can congregations do? We want to identify best practices today and in the future. There are a number of things that congregations can do. First of all, I think we need to rethink ministry, need to rethink congregational life, go back to some of the basics of health and healing that the early religious leaders talked about. We need to think about things like wellness checks, for example, especially during extreme weather, within our congregation, also in the larger community. Disability rights, we need to think about access to essential services. We certainly need to talk about economic justice, and it's significant that this program is sponsored by the Unitarian Universalists for a just economic community. We can talk about any number of things, but again, we want a healthy society for everybody and not just for people who are privileged and protected. We're concerned about all of the age groups. We're concerned about people with different abilities, and we're also concerned about every season. Now, it seems strange, but in some of the old days, some of our Unitarian Universalist congregations would actually close down for the summer. They'd be gone for 2 or 3 months. But we're now discovering that because of climate change and other problems, there's a special need during the hot weather to help with emergency services and to help with other basics for people who are houseless, for children, and for other groups that are often pushed aside, people with disabilities and others. The sea keeps rising. Each summer is hotter than the previous summer. Last summer, we had hundreds of wildfires in Canada, other areas. This summer, frankly, is going to be as bad, or it may even be worse. So we're concerned about good health protection in every season. We're concerned about computer literacy. We've already had some struggles recently as we try to get everybody into the same meeting room on Zoom. And that's something you need to keep in mind as you talk about health equity and access to a better way of living for everybody. I'm going to close with a quote. I think I have this here. That's what ministers do. We often close with a good quote from a religious text. This is reading 598 in the Gray Hymn Book for Unitarian Universalists, and the words come from the Buddha, reading number 598. May every creature abound in well-being and peace. May all attain inward grace. Just as a mother with her own life protects her only child from hurt, so within yourself foster a limitless concern for every living creature. And then as you stand or walk, sit or lie until overcome by drowsiness, devote your mind entirely to this. It is known as living the divine life. The divine life. That's what we have in mind as people of faith when we talk about health equity, the need for justice, healing, and health protection in a healthy environment for everybody. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. You remind me of my congregation in Ames, Iowa. And like the professors, our God only had a 9-month contract. And so we closed for the summer. Okay, so our second speaker will be Dr. Rashid Shaikh, and he is the former director of science at the Health Effects Institute in Boston. He's a member of the board of UU Ministry for the Earth and is passionate about climate justice issues. He'll talk about systemic racism and the need for health equity during the era of climate change. Our third speaker is Rev.Ben Atherton-Zeman. He's a settled minister for the Unitarian Universalist Church of St. Petersburg, Florida, at uustpete.org. The congregation has been active in helping people who are unhoused. Ben will discuss the evolution of this work, including a video by filmmaker Joetta Keene. And I will put, there you go. Thanks, Ben, for your patience with my tech issues.
Thank you, Terry. You're doing great. And it's an honor to be here. I'm really excited to share this workshop with my colleagues. So as Terry said, my name is Ben Atherton-Zeman. I appear on the screen as a white cisgender man in a tan shirt with short silver hair and reading glasses. And my background is a large silver chalice, and there's some pictures hanging on the wall. I come to you from the unceded ancestral lands of the Tocobaga and Seminole Native people, which colonizers have called St. Petersburg. We do indeed work to improve human health by helping unhoused people and working alongside them. And I hope that other congregations, I know that other congregations are doing similar work, especially those in urban areas who have a larger homeless population. And I would love to hear what you all are doing. And I want to tell you about some of the mistakes I think we've made, as well as some of, I think, the successes we've had. And like my colleague, Reverend Bob, I'm going to have some quotes. I'll begin with one from Father Dom Helder Camara, who's a South American liberation theologian. He said, "When I feed the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why the poor have no food, they call me a communist." Now at UU St. Pete, we try to do both. And we try to do this in a way that is relational and in keeping with our theology as Unitarian Universalists of interconnection. So my second quote will be from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny." And a lot of you will know that Dr. King wrote those words while spending the night in a Birmingham jail. Our relational and interconnected work with unhoused people of St. Petersburg is probably best exemplified by the work of Dr. John Curtis. He is one of my members, and he is a retired psychiatrist. But like you, Reverend Bob, he's not really that retired. He is very busy, and in this case, he is a sketch artist, and he has sketched portraits of unhoused people. And this very talented videographer, Joetta Keene, has captured 3 minutes of video about John Curtis in this project. And I will attempt to share that video now. And in the finished portion of this workshop, it will be shared to you in better quality. Oh.
Softly they came down. They told me there'd be another way, but I feel there's no way around it. We've been swallowed. For so many years I've lived to be free, to let the colors of the sea push and pull at me, but change is here. Ooh, change is here. Ooh, scared like a child by your mother's side. Ooh, with the swallows, we all will surely fly. Ooh, change is here. Ooh, change is here. Softly we let go. They told me it would be better now. Oh honey, what do they know? And softly we let go. Dusk is upon us, the night can be long. It's quiet and still, there's no rush and dawn, but changes.
Could sample both of John's work and a snippet of what happens on Friday evenings at the UU Church of St. Petersburg. I've only been the minister there for 3 years, and the Friday Sunset Supper was going strong for many years before I got there. Also, an annual homeless memorial where we gather together at UU St. Pete to mark the passing of those who have died that year in Pinellas County while homeless. Now, for some of these folks, this is the only funeral they would get. I like the video because it illustrates the relational nature of our video, or of our work with unhoused people. And this has been improving over the 3 years that I've been there. Some of our folks at the beginning saw the unhoused people as the other, and we actually had separate policies for when they would attend worship, where we would separate them from their bags, but we would not do that for people who were housed. Now, no one was malicious in making this practice, this policy. It came from, I think, some people's trauma over a time in our congregation when many people were camping out on our property, and both staff and members would have to clean up feces and use bleach. I heard a lot of stories about that. During those early years, we also used a law enforcement presence, having people arrested when we didn't want them on the property. I was greeted with a no loitering sign in the front of our church when I first got here. That sign was subsequently taken down once we were educated on the racist history of the loitering laws based in the system of peonage. Now, two of my mistakes, now that I've talked about our institutional mistakes, that I've done in this work, both involve overestimating staff capacity. So one of the things I did was we hired one of our unhoused folks to be our groundskeeper. And it seemed like a good idea. He was doing the work anyway and getting paid hardly anything, which seemed unfair. So we hired him at a closer to livable wage. But I did not have enough time to supervise him with I didn't have enough time to carefully supervise him in the trauma-informed way that I needed to. I didn't really factor in that this person would need a lot of care in order to be able to function well in a workplace situation. The second thing we did was allow people to camp on our front porch. Again, the relational nature of our work, both with the unhoused people in question and also with our neighbors, who then cried foul, I underestimated it. So we had to stop that program. And as another drawback of our work is, it turns out, of course, people are unhoused more than just on Fridays. They're hungry more than just on Fridays. So one of our main volunteers and leaders, named Sabina von Auloch, started a cold night shelter. So we've become a part of the homeless network, a homeless leadership alliance network of cold night shelters. And anytime there is a predicted weather forecast that it will be or feel like 40 degrees or lower, we will open our church and house 15 individuals for that night. Now, our current work is building on the Friday work, and it's thanks mostly to the efforts of our office manager, Cheyenne Hala. The previous organizations that I mentioned, the Homeless Leadership Alliance, also the Department of Health, UU's Helping People, and Celebrate Outreach, we're focused on the cold night shelter and the Friday sunset supper. With Cheyenne's leadership, we've made relationships with other organizations that were doing this kind of work anyway and needed a place to do it. So we didn't have to staff these efforts so much as we need to open our doors and accept staffing from these other groups like Food Not Bombs, the Downtown St. Pete group, PPA, a group called Dinner and Duds. So now these different groups, along with our volunteers, feed folks on a number of different nights and provide toiletries, provide medical care, provide reproductive items. As of October 1st, a state law is going to be passed making it basically illegal to sleep out in public. So I think our church will be called upon to be even more of a haven than it currently does. And I hope that we, and together with other UU churches and other members of our community, will be able to do the best we can, not just to ask why the poor have no food, or in this case, why unhoused people have no homes, but to ask why they don't have homes in a city where huge skyscrapers are being built every day for millionaires to afford a condominium, yet affordable housing seeks to lag behind, or tends to be lagging behind. I am thrilled once again to be part of this workshop, and I look forward to what my fellow speakers have to say.
Thanks, Ben. It sounds like you've really helped a lot. I've been involved with the UU funding program, and that sounds like things we would have wanted to fund. Just as a point, I mean, there is money there. We particularly like to put money where it's experimental, because the congregation may not want to take the risk, but if they see it's working, then an upfront grant can help you get things started. Our fourth speaker is Lisa Pineda, and she's BIPOC Full Spectrum Doulda, urban farmer, and STEM educator based in St. Petersburg, Florida. For over 20 years, she has developed programming to address inequities in marginalized populations, with a focus on children, senior citizens, and those striving for mental and physical wellness. She calls upon the ancient knowledge of her ancestors from indigenous American, African, and Middle East traditions to inform her community wellness work. And I will, yeah, you'll need to, you're unmuted, and I'll pin you. Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Hello, Taigui. I noticed that that Ben acknowledged the visual aspects, so I don't know if you'd like me to continue that, but I am an Indigenous woman of Taino and Penobscot heritage, and I have long dark hair, I'm wearing glasses, brown skin, with some Native American pottery and artwork behind me. So to start, again, I'm Lisa Pineda, Taigui, that is Taino for good day. And I wanted to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I know that we are all from different areas, but this is one that I regularly perform locally. We wish to acknowledge and honor the Indigenous communities who lived and took stewardship of this land prior to us. We recognize that we are on Indigenous homelands and resources of the Seminole, Miccosukee, and Tocobaga people, as well as their ancestors going back over 10,000 years. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from their territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse Indigenous people still connected to this land on which we gather. This is a call for all of us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land in which we inhabit. Hahom, thank you. So I wanted to take time to thank you all for inviting me. So often marginalized people are not included in the discussion. So I really acknowledge that you did make an effort to include a BIPOC person to speak about some of these issues that we have in our community. I myself began my journey as a child of an interracial marriage, and before it was illegal. And when my parents moved to Florida in 1972, prior to my birth, they were excluded from employment, housing, and association. When they were finally able to purchase a house, they were harassed by codes enforcement for growing food on their property. And that was customary with Indigenous peoples as well as the people of the islands. After that, I was in Fort Myers, so we became deeply involved with ECHO, which is a ministry of learning to grow food and teaching ministers to grow culturally competent food in the areas where they are being sent to perform their ministry. My father, being a multiracial Dominican man, was never given any kind of respect in regular congregations, but at ECHO, he was valued for his farming knowledge, and we found a home there. That kind of began my love of teaching about growing food, because I noticed that many people from various cultures, they may not be valued in our culture in the United States because they may be not fluent in English, they may not have any kind of degrees, but they have ancestral knowledge of growing food like my father did. He moved here as a teen, escaping Trujillo, because our family was marked for assassination. And so he never was able to finish high school. He moved here as a 12-year-old and began working immediately in New York. But he carried the knowledge from working on his father's farm, which had been in the family for over 500 years. And before that, the Taino portion of the family had been there thousands. So I and my own family realized that there was much knowledge that was not being accessed when it came to growing food. When I moved up here to St. Petersburg after there was riots, I started wondering why there would be riots in St. Petersburg. And when I went to the NAACP meetings, we found out that there was many inequities with access to food, access to education that was happening in St. Petersburg, which we also experienced in Fort Myers. So I became deeply involved, especially in the educational aspect. I noticed 20 years ago that there was no food growing anywhere in front yards, just like down in Fort Myers. And we began to fight that by doing guerrilla gardening and became a permaculturist, which is growing food that is more based on long-term rather than annuals. So it was harder for the code enforcement to attack it. We also grew food on empty lots, putting trees like mangoes and avocados that would be able to help feed unhoused people and the community. Fast forward about to 2012, and we chose to incorporate what is now Sustainable Urban Agriculture Coalition as a nonprofit, and to be able to access funding and also to officially partner with different organizations like the City of St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. And we were deeply involved in forming the ISEP, the Sustainability Action Plan. And we were able to take down, finally, a couple of years ago, the restriction of growing food in front yards. So that was a major accomplishment that took about 10 years of actively advocating and fighting for that. We are still having some issues with some people still getting citations even after that restriction being taken down, because there are height requirements for front yards of non-grass, but we're working on that. And we have a new group that's formed to address that directly, to kind of get the City of St. Petersburg talking to their own codes enforcement. That kind of that disconnect happens a lot within city organizations. So I know the main thing that Bob had asked me to speak about was not only what we were doing, kind of our history and what we're doing now. Right now, we're doing a lot of partnerships, a lot of grant writing. That's my forte, is kind of putting together partnerships and writing grants. We are still unable to financially support paying people we're 100% nonprofit organization. So we expect people to volunteer to help us to do things, and we want to change that. I know that Ben just mentioned about hiring people from the community and having a living wage. That is something we're very passionate about. And it's not sustainable to constantly expect people to volunteer. So we're working actively on that this year to try to get some funding to start hiring people to help in these community gardens, people from the community, and then also people that can help them that are experts in their field. We also are working in various schools and partnerships as well, with Edible Peace Patch Project as one of them. And we are in Title I schools. So those are schools that are lacking funding. Many of them are 80 or 90% free and reduced lunch. And in our community, that's primarily African-American and Black. But we do have a large influx of people who are escaping, like displaced people, displaced persons from other countries where they've received some sort of status to get asylum here. So we have a large community of people who have a language barrier as well as a financial barrier. So we're hoping that by expanding our community gardens, that some of those people would be able to gain access to healthy food. For the future, like why am I here would be kind of appealing to UU. A lot of people don't know this. I know Bob does, but I went to Unitarian Universalist in Fort Myers as a teen, and I used to teach in the child care program. And I was always impressed by how welcoming and inclusive the UUs were. And what I would love to kind of advocate for Unitarian Universalist to support these initiatives would be, number one would be volunteering. Number two would be space on the Unitarian Universalist sites, like maybe having gardens right there on site. And I know there are some churches that do have that, but expanding those programs, partnering with organizations like SUAC, Sustainable Urban Agriculture Coalition, where we train people how to run these gardens and then offering them jobs, like what Ben was talking about with the unhoused gentleman working. But that's kind of where the nonprofits that work in food equity might be able to assist, where we do have trained professionals that could partner with somebody that maybe isn't as experienced to work hand in hand to give them a skill, but also to make sure that it's sustainable. And then, of course, financial contributions. Financial contributions are what we're severely lacking. A lot of people think that we're somehow supported by some alternative funding source, but we are just supported by our membership fees, which is only about $2,000 to $3,000 a year, and that just pays for our insurance. So, like I said, it doesn't pay for any other any other kinds of skilled trades like grant writing or training or garden maintenance. So financial support would be amazing. Perhaps some people that might be listening might have organizations that offer grants that could maybe funnel some of the information to organizations like SUAC that would be able to partner and bring funding to be able to support some of these initiatives. Moving forward, I hope that I would be able to be a resource for people. I love to travel, and I would love to go and help people set up gardens at various locations. One of them would be at down in Fort Myers, where my parents still live. They're almost 80 years old, and they are having a lot of the same challenges that we are up here in St. Petersburg. I did want to also mention that I know that it wasn't the main thing I was going to talk about, but along with my gardening, I am a doula, and I actively use the gardens to address the inequity with Black maternal health in this area. Many of the mothers, people don't realize that when you're pregnant, you don't get extra benefits for that child. So you're eating extra, but you're not getting any extra benefits. And the food that they get for some of the programs is almost inedible. So and very few fresh produce is included in that. It's usually canned and things like cereal or pasta. And so what we're trying to do in our garden program with doulas, we are almost 100% donations based. So we never turn anybody away. So many times, I just had a birth actually a week ago, and it's love offering, and people many times can't give anything for being supported during birth or lactation. So so we are just we will be there to support them. I take my clients to the garden. It's proven that when people are around green living things, that their oxytocin level will actually goes up, their cortisol levels go down. They're more likely to have full-term births and have a healthy pregnancy. So not only is it for access to food that we have the gardens with the doulas, but we also give them healthy food when they give them a healthy attitude when they come, and a better outlook on life. We also focus on mental health. Many people don't realize that many women are lost in the postpartum period, not only from things like blood clots, but they also are lost due to postpartum depression. Many women, unfortunately, end their lives in the year after giving birth due to postpartum psychosis and mania. So these are ways that we can continue that relationship by having them bring their babies to the garden and continue to make relationships with other mothers, and also just continue the healthy microbiome that they're encountering when they're using their hands in the garden to raise their mental mood. So that's about it that I have. But when it comes to addressing equity, I feel like growing food is probably one of the most inclusive ways that we can address all sorts of different people from different backgrounds. We can bring people together. Everyone loves to eat. Everyone loves to be in the fresh air. So if we can get as many people as possible from different backgrounds into the garden, I feel like that's going to bring a lot of people together and solve a lot of these equity issues. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. How fascinating. Again, the UU funding program, if you use if it's done through the congregation and engages UUs, could be able to help you, especially on trying new projects. Our fifth and final speaker is Sally Jane Gellert. She's a radical elder and leader in UUs for a Just Economic Community. She's my co-chair. The UUJEC is the sponsor for today's program. Sally will focus on UUJEC's work to expose the disadvantages of Medicare Advantage, and will discuss the maternal health crisis that disproportionately affects people of the global majority, that is, people of color. Sally? And
Sure.
I don't know. I
Well,
can pin you. There you are.
yeah, I turned on my video, but it's not working, so I'll turn it off so you can at
Oh.
least see my name. Okay, so I am coming to you from the area of Lenapehoking, now known as Bergen County, New Jersey. This workshop is being recorded on April 17th in the middle of Black Maternal Health Week. As in so many issues, there's a racial disparity component to maternal health. In 2020, the CDC reported that Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. And in January of that year, I attended a workshop at Montclair State University here in New Jersey, where it was reported that our state, which prides itself on being a progressive, well-off state, was 47th out of 50 states in maternal deaths, with a death rate twice the national average, and Black maternal deaths 5 times greater than those of white mothers. Now, the record last month reported that research at Rutgers, published in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, calls into question the spike in maternal deaths over the last years, as there's new pregnancy checkoff box from CDC on death certificates that might mean non-pregnancy related deaths have been misclassified. However, problems and class racial disparities are real. At the Montclair event, we heard heartbreaking stories of the need to switch centers because of a new insurer, and the difficulty of finding a new clinic with lead times of 5 to 6 months to be accepted, of attending an urban clinic at which there was a new professional for every visit, making continuity of care anything but real, of missing work, mom and dad both, because of hours-long wait times, of a mother instinctively knowing that something was wrong, being told that pains were normal. You'll get used to it. At 22 weeks, being told that the pains were likely caused by dehydration. And then 2 weeks later, going to the hospital at mom's advice, not recognizing labor pains, and having a C-section, and losing the baby. What happens when all your best laid plans are for naught? It can be terribly traumatic when things go vastly wrong. We focus on hospitals, but much health care happens elsewhere. Every birth of a baby also births a mother. And after delivery, there are new issues. For instance, we need support, not barriers, for breastfeeding. Did you know that Black breastfeeding Week is in August, the 25th to the 31st. Such groups as Sisters Who Breastfeed, Sister Song, Black Mamas Matter Alliance, the JJ Way in Central Florida, and the Southern Birth Justice Network for Teenage Moms are critical. At times, I've seen Mother's Day calls for raising bail funds for Black mamas. And of course, there are deserving mamas of all ethnicities without resources for bail. And on Father's Day, think of deserving fathers jailed for lack of funds. As some states go to risk-based detention, we can hope that more accused parents can await trial at home with their families. Maternal health issues are public health issues. According to the CDC, 60% of risk factors are preventable. We need funding options for access to doulas, resource directories, baby cafes and community baby showers, and for home visitation programs. And we need programs that do not simply refer moms to other programs, but actually coordinate their care. Surgical births are much more common than in the past. In New Jersey in 2020, it was 1 of 3 births, and often babies born by cesarean section have respiratory issues, and they do not have exposure to the good biota of the birth canal. See the International Cesarean Awareness Network, ican-online.org. It's also important for moms to know that many, maybe most women can have a vaginal birth after a cesarean, though institutional policies discourage or even prevent that. We heard from a white woman who had a tremendously difficult emergency delivery without doula or husband present and had postpartum preeclampsia and terrible migraine headaches, along with depression. She did not know that migraine was an important symptom and did not realize the importance of monitoring her blood pressure or returning to the hospital. As a helping professional, she asked, if I did not know, how many others don't know? It took her months to get up the nerve to make an appointment with a therapist. And when she asked about cost, it was $700 for one appointment and not covered by insurance as she had expected. She was referred to another practice with a sliding scale, but it took another 2 months to get to her from first appointment to second. She realized that not all professionals are expert in the full variety of people's needs. We need to publicize post-birth warning signs. Though we often generalize, things are different between and within communities, levels of education, access to resources, even simply different comfort levels with asking questions and advocating for oneself and one's infant mean that one size does not fit all, or usually even most. An important encouraging development at the national level, even as abortion rights are under attack, is the creation of a maternal health caucus, of a Black maternal health caucus in Congress, which recently secured a significant investment to support Black mothers. We should also watch the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act. Running to the other end of our lives, too many seniors reach 65 and are unprepared for all the decisions that need to be made while signing up for Medicare, and they can have long-standing repercussions. Everyone turning 65 is accepted into original or traditional Medicare, regardless of health status, but the for-profit insurance industry has an array of shiny things to tempt you into what we call a Medicare disadvantage plan. In addition, unions often put retirees into a Medicare disadvantage plan aligned with the insurer of their working members. New York City public employee retirees are currently fighting such an attempt. Admittedly, some folks who have signed up for a Medicare Advantage plan are happy with their plans. Sadly, all too many of them have not tested the full benefits, or lack thereof. Often, as people fall ill with a chronic illness, they find that their options are limited in a Medicare Disadvantage plan, with pre-approvals needed, limited networks of providers, lifetime caps on coverage, etc. If you're fortunate enough to travel a lot, or even have 2 homes, check your disadvantage if your disadvantage plan covers more than the immediate area of your main home. Traditional Medicare is accepted anywhere in the country and by about 90% of providers in most areas. Back in 2010, when we were fighting for a single-payer healthcare policy, Medicare for all seemed like enough. But in the ensuing years, the industry, and it is an industry, has changed, become, quote, vertically integrated, with a single corporation controlling pharmacies, benefit managers, physicians' practices, and insurance. I'll talk about one company, United Health Group, but there are a few others that have a similar, if smaller, model. United Health Group was the 14th largest company in the country a decade ago and is now 5th largest. The company made $8.5 billion in profit on $100 billion in revenue in the last 3 months, the first quarter of 2024. Public corporations live and die by their quarterly results. No executive dare plan long-term if the next quarter's results will suffer. United Health Group owns not only insurance services, but also its Optum Pharmacy Benefits Management Division, which includes Change Healthcare, more about them later, and many physicians' practices. The company is expected to buy even more clinics and physicians' practices, many of which are facing financial trouble from reduced insurance payments. From 2014 to this year, inflation was about 32%, yet United Health Group's investment profits were up nearly 425%, from $191 million in first quarter 2014 to about $1 billion in first quarter 2024. Fortunately, patients and activists are taking notice. Yesterday, April 16th, 2024, Be a Hero group from People's Action Institute, along with Physicians for a National Health Program, protested outside United Health Group headquarters in Minnesota as the company executives were on a call with Wall Street analysts. The information I just shared is from a post in Wendell Potter's Substack newsletter, Healthcare Uncovered. I was lucky enough to meet Mr. Potter, a former Cigna Insurance Communications executive who had an epiphany at a health fair in rural West Virginia at a Progressive Democrats of America conference in Cleveland, Ohio, in the summer of 2011, shortly after he published his expose on the industry, Deadly Spin. There are likely similar statistics from any one of a handful of corporations that dominate the industry, such as CVS Aetna, who is the frequent target of National Nurses United campaigns, or Humana, which is reducing its commercial insurance to focus on Medicare Disadvantage, which is enough to raise a red flag. Our public program for seniors and the chronically ill should not be the better commercial choice for an insurance company. I mentioned Change Healthcare. Unless you're a healthcare activist, you might not know the name, certainly not before this past February, when that relatively newly acquired United Health Group data division was the target of not one, but two ransomware attacks. Apparently, the first hacker was out-hacked by a second who took the first ransom payments. That's not been confirmed, but that's the assumption. The hacks presumably leaked massive amounts of personal data, as well as disrupting billions of dollars of payments to a vast number of medical professionals for weeks, including some of the practices that are now facing financial difficulties that are likely to be, which difficulties are likely to lead to their being bought out by a local hospital, a private equity firm, or an insurance company like United Health. The acquisition of Change Healthcare by United Health Group was opposed by regulators when proposed back in 2020, including a Department of Justice antitrust filing in 2022. But the judge who decided the case in a strongly pro-merger decision was Carl Nichols, appointed by Trump and approved in a narrow, largely partisan Senate vote. Although Supreme Court judicial appointments are often in focus, the administration and congressional makeup also affect the appointment of many other federal judges with long-lasting effects. Elections, Wendell Potter reminds us, have consequences. The CEO of United Health Group will be testifying in Congress in a matter of weeks, and there are both Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission investigations in the works. The vast consolidation and vertical integration of the healthcare industry has led the founders of Physicians for a National Health Program to suggest that Medicare for all is maybe not enough. An actual national health service might be the only way to take back healthcare and insurance from private profiteers. Our healthcare task force meets monthly, usually on the third Monday at 1:30 on the East Coast, 12, 11, or 10:30 heading west, and along with the other UUJEC task forces, we have a discussion forum on our new site in progress, uujec.net. We'd be glad to have you join us.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any follow-up comments on Sally or any of the other speakers?
I just appreciate you, Sally, mentioning that we're recording this on April 17th and the work that you're doing. April 17th is also, I've learned, Youth Homelessness Matters Day. A lot of our unhoused and homeless folks that we help are youth, and this is
Great. Thanks for adding that. All right. Well, I guess we're going to wind this up. It's about an hour, so that's a nice amount of time. Thanks everybody for coming, and our contributors are just really had a lot to say. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.